Southwest Florida, welcome to Lee Pitts Live. Where are we? We're at Mount Hermon Ministries, and boy, we're talking politics here at this fabulous church. We have some outstanding guests here as the political season is in the air. The general election will be taking place in November, and the general election is already hot on the trail. We have a representative here, a state rep who's running for the state office. Also, we have a state senator who's here running as well. So we're gonna get a chance to meet them on Lee Pitts Live. So first of all, I want you guys to know that when it's politics season, Lee Pitts Live is the place to be. We're gonna get a chance to we're gonna welcome them to the show. Anselm, welcome to Lee Pitts Live, man.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Tell people what you're running for.
So I'm running for Florida House District 76. That will be Sanibel Island, Pine Island, Fort Myers Beach, San Carlos Park, and Bonita Springs area.
Okay, we'll get back to you and get to learn a lot more about you. And Rachel Brown, what are you running for now?
Yes, I'm running for Florida Senate, District 27, and that's basically all of Lee County. So if you're in Lee County, you can vote for me.
Okay. You're both Democrats?
Yes.
That is true.
Okay, we won't hold that against you.
All right.
Good. Now, you both seem relatively young in politics speaking, and why'd you decide, Rachel, to throw your hand into the political arena?
Sure. Yeah. So we were asked to run by Janelle Christensen, the president of the Democratic Environmental Caucus, because of this massive need for reform around the state of Florida. We have people protesting. We have people that have been ignored for quite some time, and our legislators are not listening to us. So we need a change. And so they managed to fill almost every position across Florida with progressives. And so Anselm and I were up for the challenge, and we would like to see a lot of change. We both taken part in activism and protesting, and so we're ready and wanting to make that change happen.
Okay, we'll get to why you both are sitting here together later. Why'd you decide to put your hat in the political arena?
So like Rachel described, I got approached by Janelle Christensen, who's the president of the Democratic Environmental Caucus of Florida. And there's many vacancies across the state with state races. State Senate seats and state House races are vacant, and they don't have any Democratic challengers. So she approached me to run in this area, and I thought about it for maybe a week, and I thought, might as well do it. I mean, the country's falling apart, so I might as well throw my hat in the ring to try to save it.
What do you have to say to those people? Say, don't you have your own brain? Or you a robot? Somebody tells you to run and you run? Or is any of it as a result of you and your own intuition, your own desire? Go.
Absolutely. I mean, I've grown up relatively middle class, lower middle class. My mother passed away when I was 14, and I have always had health care and finances on our mind. And I've worked in Dunkin' Donuts positions and all those things, and I've seen what it is to live poor. I've never experienced extreme poverty, but I know plenty of people that have. And I feel that with COVID especially, working people and low-income people's needs are not being met. So I figured I'm going to throw my hat in the ring because people need to have their needs met. We need health care, we need housing.
You want to make a difference.
Absolutely.
Okay, same question to you. You're not a robot just because somebody asked you to run. You said somebody asked you to run. What about you? What do you think?
Right. A lot of people are wanting to get involved, and it's difficult. People don't know how. And so I was blessed with this awesome opportunity, but I've been wanting to get involved in a bigger way for a long time. I've been involved in climate activism, joining in Black Lives Matter protests. I've done a lot of activism, and I also study environmental engineering. So I've also been born and raised here in Southwest Florida. So I've seen the changes happen. I've seen people being ignored, like I said, and it's time for a change.
And both of you have a strong bend towards a keen awareness for the environment, would you say?
Yes,
I would think so.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, the fact that both of you, back to you, Rachel, the fact that both of you are sitting here like tag team partners, you guys have a very similar ideology. Tell me how you formed that alliance.
Yes. So originally, before I met Anselm, I had a very individualistic perspective of change, but Anselm kind of helped me see the need for Medicaid expansion and the need for better housing policy, and so my political understanding has grown since I've met Anselm, and he's a big part of why I consider myself a progressive.
Expand on that, Anselm.
Yeah,
the
so
partnership?
the partnership, yeah. When I met her, she was more, I would say, conservative leaning. Whereas like I pointed out a lot of things like universal health care is actually cheaper for most people, so we should expand that. Housing does not need to be this high. Wages do not need to be this low, and just focused on the needs of what people need, especially with the environment. It's very sorry about that. So yeah, especially with the environment, we need collective action to do something about climate change, and that means having about a green jobs program that will give people a well-paying job, all while combating climate change.
When you're moving around and doing what you're doing, it's hard to move around now. We are socially distanced. People need to know we're at least 8 feet apart for all the people who want to complain. But and you guys came in with your mask on. But when you're moving around on social media in any type of way right now that you're able to connect with your constituencies, do you hear a lot of rumbling, a lot of conversation around the environment and around housing and those types of things? What's the buzz that you're hearing out there?
Absolutely. From what I've seen from my constituents, and not just my constituents, my friends, the eviction crisis that is going on is very much on people's minds. We have 51% of Floridian renters are at risk for eviction, and this is, in the best of times, this is awful that people have to go through eviction, but during a global pandemic where many of the people that are at risk for eviction do not have health insurance, this is especially very troubling. So housing and healthcare and rental relief and homeowner relief are the biggest things that I'm hearing, and of course wearing a mask, because that's just very basic general safety.
Over there to you, Rachel. I'll come back to you more on housing and some other things, but in healthcare. But Rachel, talk about what you're hearing out there as you're moving around and talking to people, and whatever form or way you're able to connect to people right now.
Yeah, people are very concerned about the way that our Florida leadership has dealt with this pandemic. This is a group project, and when you say things like, well, not everybody has to wear a mask, then it's hurting other people around you. It's almost like drunk driving. It's your liberty, but when your liberty infringes upon somebody else's safety, then that's not okay. And so that's a big concern that I've seen in the community. Now,
you're running for the state house. That's the House of Representatives for the state of Florida. Yours would be the Senate for the state of Florida. Tell us, and I'll come over there to you in a second, tell us how the two houses work together and how you two can be a powerful duo up in Tallahassee. Go with you, Rachel.
Yeah, that's a great question. The Senate does have more power, and so bills move up through the House, and then the Senate can decide if they like that or not, if they want to support it or not. And so it's very important that the House and the Senate are working together and are on the same mindset of putting the people first and doing what's best for the community.
So essentially, on the Democratic ticket, you'll be looking in the general election, you'll be waiting for a Republican opponent.
Yes, so I have 2 Republican opponents that are having a primary this August, and then whoever wins is going to go up against me in November. Okay,
so you're just sitting there waiting to knock them off? You feel pretty good?
Yeah.
About what you're hearing out there and how you're feeling?
Yeah, we're growing our base. We're definitely growing a lot more volunteers. Both of our campaigns are grassroots movements, and so we're gaining a lot of momentum and planning for when the time comes and they start attacking us on TV instead of attacking each other during their primary. Hopefully we'll have a lot of support by then and be ready for the challenge.
Okay. Over here, the fact that you're running in a sort of like on the same page, and you get to the House of Representatives in Tallahassee, to have somebody in the Senate that knows you can start to work together on different bills. That a big influence for you, big help?
Absolutely. I mean, if I were able to put a bill to expand rental and homeowner relief in the House, I know that Rachel will be there and she'll be doing the exact same thing. Like with we're together as a couple, and I mean just being together in the state legislature, we'll be working on several bills that are going to be helping out working people in our environment all at the same time.
This is a good. I would assume that both of you are big on having a lot of individuals give small amounts of money, grassroots type approach to the election process. We're going to give an opportunity now for people to start donating, knowing how to get in touch with you. How do they get in touch with you? How do they find out how to contribute and be a part of your campaign?
Okay, yeah. So you can always contact me on my email, ansomweber4flhouse@gmail.com. All low caps, no space. And you can contact me at 239-431-3810. And I have an Act Blue. I don't know exactly how it's the URL is, but there's an Act Blue. You just look up Act Blue Anselm Weber, and then you can find me.
Right, and also you're on social media.
I am on social media as well.
Same thing here, Rachel.
Yeah, so I have an Act Blue. If you go to my website, rachelbrownforfloridasenate.com, and you click on the donate button, you can help me out in that way. Also, you can reach me at my email, which is the same, just at gmail.com. And if you'd like to contact me, ask me more questions, you can call 239-370-0336.
Now, this part of the country has generally been a red part of the country, Republican. You guys are out there going against the establishment. It seems like right now it's sort of like a revolution in this part all around the country, where people are really being energized and activated. How do you guys feel carrying that radical change? Rachel, start with you. Let's go over here with you. Start with you. How you feel with carrying that mantle of change in a red environment, turning it blue?
I'm really excited to show people that might not know about progressive issues and showing them why they should be taking interest in it. The Republican Party is not very much interested in working class issues. They do not support raising minimum wage. They do not support expanding health care. They do not support expanding affordable housing. I believe a lot of conservatives, so much of the conversation around politics has been driven out of talking about material working class needs. So I figure a lot of Republicans have not heard that message of we need to helping working class people. I will bring that message to them, and I believe a lot of them would support a lot of things. I mean, Medicare for All has a very high approval rating, affordable housing, raising minimum wage, cleaning up our environment, taxing corporations. These all have very high polling.
So in short, a lot of these things now are really hurting Republicans as well.
Exactly.
And it's starting to, people understand that everybody needs, like right now with all these government aid programs, people are realizing that, I would say, going to you on this, Rachel, that you never know when you need assistance, and we need to have our government there for that. Is that the way you feel?
Right. We're in extreme times right now where everybody is seeing the effects of COVID-19. Businesses are hurting, individuals are hurting, and it seems like a very relevant time to be talking about better public housing, to be talking about a livable wage, and what happens when people can't work. So that's why basic necessities like public housing are so important right now, and expanding Medicaid are so important.
What's your thoughts about Governor DeSantis and how he's handled things so far?
I don't approve. Don't approve at all. We definitely need mandatory masks. We need to take care of our children instead of just sending them to school with no mandatory mask ordinance. I believe there's a way that it can be done. You can do partially in person with proper protection and partially online if people want to do that. But cutting funding for online education during a global pandemic is a terrible idea that doesn't benefit the people.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know, Anselm, you and her have very similar ideology, so I'll reshape that question. Do you draw a straight line to some of the atrocities in terms of the pandemic that has caused on the state of Florida? Do you draw a straight line straight to the governor of the state of Florida?
In Florida,
as the person to blame?
Absolutely. I believe Governor DeSantis has dropped the ball on every level. We needed to have mask ordinance. We needed to shut down the economy while giving massive rental and homeowner relief. That's the problem, is that when you have a party that doesn't focus on working class issues, they're just going to focus on getting the economy back to work. But what if you're working? What if you are compromised and you don't have health care? Oh, you just have to go back to work. They're not prioritizing people that need to be staying home and being safe, and prioritizing them to be able to live at home instead of having to deal with eviction crisis, which Governor DeSantis put in special language in this most recent eviction moratorium that's going to allow further evictions to take place. So,
Candidate Weber, when you saw that the state of Florida was opening before meeting the benchmarks that were set by the CDC before opening the state, you knew the state of Florida was opening early. What was going through your mind at the time?
I thought it was only a matter of time before cases will start to spike, and lo and behold, they did. And it didn't bring me any satisfaction knowing that, because that means working people and a lot of people who are immunocompromised are going to get sick, and they are, the death rate that toll is at 7,000. We have over 400,000 coronavirus cases. It's very bleak, and we had a 13% uninsured rate before COVID-19. That's only going up as millions of people are losing their job-based healthcare. So it's very problematic, and it's we need new leadership, obviously. We need new leadership that's going to take working class issues into account and also public health into account.
Rachel, you got to have your eyes on the national election as well, the President of the United States. A lot of people be going to the polls in November. Donald Trump versus Joe Biden on the Democratic side, and Donald Trump, of course, on the Republican side. When you look at Joe Biden, how do you feel about Joe Biden as the President of the United States?
Joe Biden was not my first choice. I did volunteer for the Bernie Sanders campaign, but I do believe that it's time for new leadership, and our current president has shown signs of even wanting to postpone the election. And so there's been so many things that the way that he's handled our COVID-19 crisis, things like that. We need new leadership. Biden was not my first choice, but I will be voting for him.
Same question.
Yeah, I'll ditto to Rachel. Joe Biden was not my first choice. I have a lot of hang-ups, especially with this involvement in mass incarceration. However, I would much rather be fighting Joe Biden on things like Medicare for all or decriminalizing drug possession charges than Donald Trump, who has obviously been tearing up the Constitution with sending federal troops to cities like Portland or Chicago. Also just cutting Social Security and Medicare with this recent cutting of the payroll tax. Donald Trump is a cancerous tumor. We need to cut the tumor before we can actually get any kind of progress. I do not agree with Joe Biden on many things, but I think that he's a much better change for what the country needs than Donald Trump.
The systematic, a lot of systematic issues, Rachel, you've been very vocal about. There are a lot of systematic things that you want to really see changed. Talk about a couple of those.
Yes. So the thing about systems is that everything's connected. And so I can start with our black markets. We have, we criminalized drug possession and prostitution. And in turn, we're arresting people who are victims of sex trafficking, and we're arresting people who are victims of drug abuse, and they're not getting the help that they need. And so those people are filtered into our prison system, and they come out being left with less of a chance of having a better job. And that's the system. And so they're very likely to go back into those old situations that they were in before, and a big part of that is also minimum wage. If people don't have a livable wage, they're going to be a lot more likely to look into other ways to make money. And so we need a livable wage. We need to stop incarcerating victims of our systems. There are so many systematic changes we can make. The way that we're dealing with climate change, it needs to be a huge structural change because it's affecting everybody.
If you're elected to the Senate, you have to win some consensus on some various votes. You're going to have to walk the halls and get your constituencies or even across the aisles to get people to vote in favor of some amendments that you may put forward. Just in general, what do you think about allow you to be able to win friends, build consensus, influence people to kind of see things the way you see them?
Right. So getting bipartisan support, is that kind of what you're thinking
Exactly.
of? Yeah. Bipartisan support is necessary if, we have to work together, of course. The way I see it, if you take everything into consideration, you take the economy. Anselm and I were part of a recent economic and environmental or climate defense initiative. And so that's something that takes into account every aspect of society, not just one little niche area like climate, but everything altogether. And so if we do that, if we take in multiple aspects of society, then I think that's how we can make that change happen.
What do you say to those people? Say you guys are running around like hippies, talking about environment, talking about algae, talking about the climate change and all of that. What do you say to those people, Anselm?
I mean, we have the UN just reported that we have 4 years left to do something about the 1.5 degrees Celsius rise globally, which is what scientists consider to be the threshold that our globe can even take. So you can call me a hippie, but I'm using actual data that's provided by the United Nations.
Yeah.
And what the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, when they first released that we have 12 years left in 2018 to do something about climate change, they recommended a World War II-like global effort to combat climate change. That doesn't mean throwing guns at the climate change issue. That means throwing jobs. That means having jobs for everybody, having a job that is combating climate change, whether it's building solar panels, wind panels, carbon sequestration, Generation 4 nuclear power plants. It means throwing our resources. We pay $740 billion a year on wars that most people cannot even name what countries we're in. We can dedicate a lot of our resources to combating climate change while at the same time providing working class people a job that pays a living wage with benefits and collective bargaining rights.
Absolutely. And if I can chime in on that, we're basing this off of, like Anselm said, NOAA, the IPCC, their numbers. We're not experts on everything.
Right.
But if we listen to the scientists, if we listen to experts in respective fields, then that's what we're doing. If people are going to call us hippies, we can't stop them.
That's
but
me trying to
we're
get a
basing
laugh.
this off of evidence.
That's a conservative conversation. Let's go with the both of you. I think I've seen you active with Black Lives Matter. I mean, you're there. You got your signs. You're no justice, no peace. Let's get your overall perspective on Black Lives Matter. Is the headline. Okay, that's the headline name, but it's a lot of things that fall in under that in terms of politics, social unrest, and everything else pertaining there too is just thrown in there right now. What's your general thoughts about the Black Lives Matter movement?
Well, I'll start with a broad kind of a broad brush. So black and brown people, like our country's already hurting with poverty, with lack of insurance for health care, lack of affordable housing. Black and brown people are facing the worst of these problems that affect all low-income people because we've had historical redlining, Jim Crow laws, slavery, obviously, for 350 plus years. So we've had 50 years of technical in-name legislation that provides protection for black and brown people, yet we have systems where, I mean, the average wage is only $2 more than 1960s. We have a mass incarceration system that locks up 2.3 million people across the country, and black and brown people make up a disproportionate amount of it. So Black Lives Matter, I think, is an essential movement that is combating police brutality, mass incarceration, but is more broadly talking about the material differences that black and brown people have compared to white, wealthier people. So it is not just about, like, I believe it's sort of like MLK. He did not just focus purely on black people. He focused on the overall structure of wealth redistribution. We need to have better health. We need to have health care for all. We need to have affordable housing for all. We need to have better wages. And our government does not need to be going into other countries and causing trouble.
Many will say, "Oh, hey, you're talking about a socialist society," and it's just me saying what many say, and I want you to respond to that. And it sounds more like a Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren agenda. What do you say to that?
I mean, if you want to, I don't think it's very socialist. I mean, countries like Norway have all these things. They have redistributed wealth. They have universal health care, and they're capitalist societies. I'm not a socialist, but I believe that we can take the resources we have with our government, instead of giving massive corporate tax breaks and allowing corporations to buy back their own stock. I'd rather see money that, instead of going to wealthier people, wealthier corporations, goes directly to the people. You can call it socialist, you can call it whatever. I just think that working people need their basic needs met, and if the government is the state is the provider of those resources, call it whatever you want. It's providing people what they need.
Rachel, I think you want to add to that, don't you?
Yes, I do. About the protests that we've been a part of, they've been wonderful. Here in Lee County, we've seen an awesome movement. Lee County Peaceful Protest is a Facebook group that we've started. And Anselm and I...
Shout out to Chantel
Yes,
and Napa.
yes.
Yeah. Go ahead. I
Yeah.
want to get off track.
Thank you for that. Yes, they're wonderful people. We met them during the protests, but they've been really great and now shifting towards organizing and how are we going to make long-term effects in relation to Black Lives Matter. Currently, the city of Fort Myers does give about 40% of their budget to the police department. And I believe that if we decriminalize drug possession, then that will allow us to be able to shift a lot of those funds toward the community and preventative measures.
So let's go to people sitting there now. They're looking at these young, enthusiastic future politicians. Who are they? Let's get a little background. Not a dissertation, but who is Rachel Brown?
Yeah.
You're born and raised in the area.
Yeah,
Go through that whole background.
I was born and raised in Southwest Florida. I was so my grandfather came to Naples from Costa Rica because he got a job as a nurse here, as a private nurse, and so that side of the family came here, settled in Naples. And my father comes from a long line of Floridians, and so I was born and raised here in Naples, and living in Naples, I've seen the differences between, there's still poverty in Naples, there's a lot of wealth. For so many years of my life, we didn't have air conditioning in my house, and my mother worked 3 jobs to put me into private school. So I've seen the effects of how poverty can impact somebody's life and how hard an individual has to work and sacrifice their life in order to make a good life for their children, just based on their circumstance. And so, that gives me, like, personally a feeling towards poverty.
What's your education background? Where you worked before? Things like that.
Yes, I study environmental engineering at Florida Gulf Coast University. I've been taking classes part-time there while also working in country clubs, fast food, different places. And I also do a lot of organizing. I started the Fort Myers Sunrise Movement. I have done a lot of climate strikes with them and with other organizations. And so that's kind of my area of expertise.
And along that way, algae blooms.
Yeah.
Talk about that and your passion around that.
Yeah, that's a huge problem here in Florida since we're in a coastal environment. And Florida really is supposed to function as a filter, but it's not functioning that way because we're doing so much clear cutting for real estate. We're not planning our cities very well. If we just planned our cities very well, we wouldn't have such a huge problem with this. We have around 62% of our runoff into the Caloosahatchee is coming from local areas, and so there's so much that we can be doing. We can be putting more restrictions on animal agriculture, on the sugar industry. We can have better fertilizing restrictions. So I feel I always want to talk so much about this. There's so much I could talk about, but I do have a background in environmental engineering. It's basically the study of pollution and pollution prevention, and algae blooms is a huge part of that.
Candidate Weber, who are you?
My name's Anselm.
Who is this guy?
So I grew up in Sarasota, Florida, which is the 13th highest wealth inequality in the country. Then I moved down to Fort Myers and Naples area, which now has the 9th largest wealth inequality in the country. But I grew up, my dad was an adjunct professor. My mother passed away at the age of 14, which made my family rely on my dad's income as an adjunct professor, which doesn't pay as much, pays about like $25,000 to $30,000 a year, which makes it, but I mean, it is hard. And I went to school at Florida Gulf Coast University. That's why I moved down to Fort Myers, and that's where I studied history. And not only was I studying history, but I was working in Dunkin' Donuts. I was working as a dishwasher. And I studied a lot of my time on the history of colonialism, but also American history, especially around black and brown people like Native Americans, the history of segregation in not just the South, but also in the North with redlining.
Don't go there yet. He's on camera. Stay there.
So yeah, when I studied these things, I see that our whole history has been plagued by class conflict, by people not having the resources they need, whereas they have a 1% or 10% amount of people that are kind of hoarding the resources that working class people need. So, and while I was studying all this, I was working $8.50 an hour at a Dunkin' Donuts job in Estero, Florida, where I was selling to wealthier people. So I mean, all these things kind of worked in tandem, where I was reading about all this history of lack of resources for low-income people, while I was also experiencing it. Whereas I come from a background where I had education, I eventually was able to get a job at NextGen Florida, where I did voter registration at Florida Gulf Coast University at Florida Southwestern. So I was able to get out of the minimum wage grind, and I was able to get a well-paying job. So, but all these things have influenced my upbringing, because not just I view it personally, like I see my friends dealing with it. I see my friends working 2 jobs to get by. She was working 2 jobs to get by while I was working at Dairy Queen and Dunkin' Donuts. We of course have it much better than a lot of people, but it is rough. I mean,
you talked about the climate. You talked about
climate and
the pandemic. But one of the things that constantly comes out in your conversation is wages, labor.
Exactly.
I would think that you have some type of thoughts about where the minimum wage should be and those types of things. Get specific on that for me.
So one thing I would say, everybody, I encourage you to vote for Amendment 2, which will raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2026. It'll be adjusted for inflation from there on. The minimum wage in Florida is $8.46, which is about half of what a living wage is. A living wage being...
Going back to your Dunkin' Donut days?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And a living wage is what pays basic needs. It means that you're able to afford healthcare, housing, food for your family, and so on. We do not have a wage that supports those mechanisms. I mean, you have to, I think, at the federal minimum wage at $7.25, you have to work 2.5 jobs to get a bedroom apartment that actually supports yourself. This is unthinkable. I mean, Jeff Bezos saw his gross income raise $71 billion in just 5 months since COVID-19, which is that increase alone is enough to pay everybody's college tuition across the whole country. I mean, it's not just wages, it's just that we have so much wealth. We're the wealthiest country in the world. And I mean, in Florida, we are one of the wealthiest states in the country. And it is unfathomable to me that...
Why do you think that hasn't been addressed?
It's because we have people in office, Republicans and even some Democrats, unfortunately, that they've prioritized corporations over people. I mean, we have Citizens United ruling in 2010, which says that a corporation is a person, therefore they can donate however much they want to a campaign. We had mass incarceration instead of in the 80s when jobs were leaving, like the Midwest and the North, that manufacturing jobs. Instead of providing relief for people who were getting laid off from those jobs, we funded a mass incarceration system that locked up specifically black and brown people dramatically for low-level crime like drugs and petty theft and broken windows policies. So we have the resources to combat these problems, yet we put it towards resources that don't solve anything. Giving somebody a criminal sentence does not give them any kind of mobility to get out of their economic situation. It's just going to further deteriorate it. If you give someone a criminal sentence, then the likelihood of them finding a job is very low. So it's in a way of punishing the poor for problems that, while rich people, wealthier people, are able to get away with a lot of these things.
Rachel, you're sitting there listening to him, but I want to go to some things that you're hot on, that human trafficking.
Yes.
When you get up there to Tallahassee, human trafficking has been around for quite some time now.
Yes. Yeah.
It hasn't been addressed, in your opinion, and what's the first thing you're going to do to start addressing that issue?
Yeah, I don't think it's been addressed very much until recently. I have seen a lot of people talking about it, which is great that people are,
How did you come about that, though, as something that has really ignited you?
Yeah, so actually, years ago in a Bible study group, we were we each were supposed to do a charity event, and so I got in contact with the man who ran the resource center for the Human Trafficking Resource Center of Lee and Collier County, and we put together an awareness event about human trafficking. And at the time, I had very little knowledge about the whole issue, but I learned a lot about it through that. And then later on, going into my work with along with Anselm with Students for Sensible Drug Policy, and realizing how those two things are connected, the black market of drugs and how they're used to keep victims of human trafficking. And also learning about labor trafficking and how undocumented immigrants have a high likelihood of not having labor rights because they're undocumented. And that's a form of trafficking as well. I don't think that those things are being addressed, and when we decriminalize prostitution, when we decriminalize drug possession, then we will, again, like I said, stop incarcerating those people and actually create a way to go into those issues and solve them, unmask them, instead of just making it illegal and saying, well, it's illegal now. We're basically just covering it up.
I got you. So we're getting close to wrapping this up. I want to give both of you the opportunity to look into this particular camera one at a time. Take 30 seconds, make your appeal to the American people, particularly the people in your district, in terms of supporting you in November. We'll start with you, Rachel.
Okay, thank you. Yes. I feel a lot of momentum right now, and I believe that 2020 is the year that we can make massive change. We can make a huge change in Florida. Vote for progressive candidates if you want to defy the norm of politics, if you want to end corporate interest in politics and change the way that we do politics and make it work for people, make our governments work for people instead of corporate interests.
I would support a lot of the same thing. What I'm going to do for the Florida House District 76 is put our clean water, our environment, and our people first, instead of big cattle, big sugar corporations, and whatever interest that is sucking the life out of people's living conditions. People need a higher wage. People need health care. People need affordable housing. Yet we don't have a state government that is supporting that. 53% of people in Lee County are paying 30% or more of their income on housing. That is abominable. I do not support that, and I'll be fighting so that people have affordable housing. 19% of the working age population in Lee County does not have health care. That is, again, awful. We need to change that so everybody has health care. And the poverty rate is about 19% across Lee County. It needs to be close to zero as much as possible, and that means raising people's wages, getting rid of right-to-work laws of the state of Florida so that people have access to a union and collective bargaining rights. And also, we need to have a green jobs program so that people can get a job while combating climate change that pays for their basic living, and so that we can get out of an environment that is polluting, an environment that is beautiful and is climate change free.
Well, candidate Weber, candidate Brown, I wish you both much luck in your campaign. I'm sure you'll be working your way back around to Lee Pitts Live as we get towards the general. For those who joined us late, both of them are running in the general election, and they're already on the move, so look for their names on the ballot, the absentee ballots, and all that as time goes on. So for those who say it can't be done, they're usually interrupted by those like these two fine candidates who are doing it. We'll see you soon on Lee Pitts Live on Fox 4.
Lee Pitts Live is a Lee Pitts Enterprise production.
Hello, Southwest Florida. Thanks for watching Lee Pitts Live. Of course, I'm Lee Pitts. I hope you enjoy that particular show, but you can always catch us here on YouTube. Just click on the subscribe button down there. That way you can get your Lee Pitts Live on demand when you want it and how you want it. We also encourage you to watch our show on Fox 4 and connect with us on all our social media platforms. Just type in Lee Pitts Live.